But first, this is the front page of tomorrow's edition of Stars and Stripes newspaper, which goes out to American military installations all over the world. As you can see there, it says, booted. Obama relieves McChrystal of command. Petraeus to take over. The lead of their front page story reads, quote, General Stanley McChrystal's career could not survive another embarrassing public fight with his superiors, but America's fundamental strategic plan for conducting the war in Afghanistan may have. In summoning General McChrystal to Washington today, President Obama had a choice to make that was much more important and, frankly, much more difficult than whether or not to fire his top commander in Afghanistan. The Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 88, says any commissioned officer who uses contemptuous words against the President, the Vice President, Congress, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of a military department, the Secretary of Transportation, or the governor or legislature of any state, territory, commonwealth, or possession in which he is on duty or present shall be punished as a court-martial may direct. I don't know why the Secretary of Transportation gets singled out there. Lucky him. But the contemptuous words standard in the Uniform Code of Military Justice made the decision about whether or not to remove General McChrystal from his post not a foregone conclusion, but it made it the easier of the two decisions that the president had to make today.
I've got no greater honor than serving as Commander-in-Chief of our men and women in uniform. And it is my duty to ensure that no diversion complicates the vital mission that they are carrying out. That includes adherence to a strict code of conduct. The strength and greatness of our military is rooted in the fact that this code applies equally to newly enlisted privates and to the general officer who commands them. The conduct represented in the recently published article does not meet the standard that should be set by a commanding general. It undermines the civilian control of the military that is at the core of our democratic system.
Noah Shachtman, writing at Danger Room today, summarized the direct impetus for the president removing General McChrystal today. In a post titled, Why Obama Had to Fire McChrystal, he said this, quote, in the end, it was Obama's only move. Keeping General Stanley McChrystal in place would have shattered the chain of command. No general could have taken Obama seriously after getting dissed so publicly by McChrystal's crew. No captain or sergeant could have been expected to shut up and salute when his superior officer gave an order. The guy at the top didn't respect his commander. Why should he? The culture of accountability so meticulously built up by Bob Gates during his tenure at the Pentagon, gone. The long tradition of civilian control of the military, wrecked. So if there were two decisions the president had to make today, the first one, whether or not to remove General McChrystal from his position in Afghanistan, the first one was the more straightforward of the two. The more important and more complex decision was whether or not General McChrystal's firing also means that what the general stood for in terms of U.S. war strategy would also fundamentally be reconsidered. The president made clear today that it would not. The general who personifies the strategy was fired. The strategy itself is retained.
Let me say to the American people, this is a change in personnel, but it is not a change in policy. We have a clear goal. We are going to break the Taliban's momentum. We are going to build Afghan capacity. We are going to relentlessly apply pressure on al-Qaeda and its leadership, strengthening the ability of both Afghanistan and Pakistan to do the same. That's the strategy that we agreed to last fall. That is the policy that we are carrying out in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
This is a change in personnel, not a change in policy. It is hard to believe that a war, a grand strategy involving the lives of tens of thousands of soldiers and millions of civilians, a military doctrine, should rise or fall with the fate of one man. But tales of military history and heroism so often do center on the fate and the decisions of just one man for a reason. Leaders and their behavior matter. In this case, the behavior of General McChrystal, captured by a reporter with unfettered access to him, did not just show indiscipline or insubordination. They called into question the military doctrine that General McChrystal championed.
You know, the favorite saying of, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We can't operate that way. We can't walk with only a hammer in our hands.
This is something that takes a tremendous amount of understanding. What I'm really telling people is the greatest risk we can accept is to lose the support of the people here. If the people are against us, we cannot be successful.
What is counterinsurgency? COIN, as they call it, right? What is the strategy that General McChrystal is just describing there? It's essentially the explosion of military objectives so that they include all sorts of things we don't usually consider to be military things that you can't usually achieve through military means. It means, as General McChrystal says, that you can't kill your way out of a place like Afghanistan. You can't kill your way to victory. Instead, the goal is to secure population centers, set up Afghan governance, set up governance that itself keeps insurgents in check even after the military campaign is over.
We are going to break the Taliban's momentum. We are going to build Afghan capacity. We are going to relentlessly apply pressure on al-Qaeda and its leadership, strengthening the ability of both Afghanistan and Pakistan to do the same.
Building Afghan capacity, strengthening the capacity of both Afghanistan and Pakistan to keep their own pressure on al-Qaeda. Standing up a civil society and structures of governance as our war goals. Think about that for a second. In the recent U.S. offensive in Marja, which was seen as an important test case for this strategy, General McChrystal explained that the initial military operation was only to create enough calm, secure space to open up a, quote, government in a box, to set up local government in Marja that would replace and crowd out the insurgency there. That would be the measure of success. So you need not just infantrymen, you need city councilmen, you need magistrates, you need a court system, you need experts in agriculture and wastewater treatment and education and economics. You need all of this stuff or the war can't be won. It's not like a war and development. They're all together. You can't win the war without all those things working too. That's the basic idea of counterinsurgency. Not just people with guns, but people with all sorts of things to offer. And if all you get right, if all you do well is the guns part, you fail. You lose the war. That is the big story of what came crashing down on General McChrystal when he agreed to talk openly with Michael Hastings from Rolling Stone. Because if General McChrystal, if he is the guy responsible for that strategy and preaching that strategy that requires unity of effort between the military and all of these non-military people who are needed to win a war like this, you can't both be that guy and be the guy who's talking smack about all of the non-military people who even you say are essential to your mission. You can't be the guy who says that's necessary and the guy who talks all that smack. Having that destructive and derisive an attitude, not only toward civilian leadership in Washington, but also toward every non-military resource and asset that you're supposed to be bringing to bear on your military objectives, means that you can talk all you want about the beauty and elegance of counterinsurgency theory. But you, sir, provably don't believe in it. General McChrystal says he believes in it, but he showed in his words and actions that he doesn't. And so the president had a decision to make. Now that the guy who is promoting and leading the counterinsurgency strategy has shown by his actions that even he doesn't believe in it, do you scrap the strategy altogether? Or do you replace General McChrystal with another true believer? President Obama chose the latter option. He chose to not change the policy, but instead to just change the personnel.
General Petraeus fully participated in our review last fall, and he both supported and helped design the strategy that we have in place.
Today in Afghanistan, military officials announced 6 more NATO soldiers were killed, including 3 Americans. That makes 76 international forces killed this month alone, among them 46 Americans killed. The proponents of counterinsurgency, the Coindenistas, the people who really believe in this doctrine, warned us a year ago, longer, that this would be about the time that we would be seeing increased casualties. This is all expected, all part of the plan. It is one thing to ask us as a nation to endure these casualties as part of an overall plan. It is another thing to ask us to believe that the plan itself makes any sense. Joining us now is Paul Reichoff, founder and executive director of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. He is a veteran of the Iraq War. Paul, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Rachel. Good to be with you.
So President Obama made clear today that this is a change in personnel, not policy. Would this have been the right time to reassess the overall counterinsurgency policy in Afghanistan?
I think we should be constantly reassessing our policy in Afghanistan. I think folks on the ground are constantly reassessing it. But I think, there's also a larger message here. I don't know if the American public is really engaged here, and I don't know if the White House has been fully engaged. Now, look, McChrystal was out of line, and what he said definitely was out of bounds, and it sent a poor message to the troops. But I think there's something to be drilled down in here. For the counterinsurgency doctrine to succeed, you need that full support of everybody in the civilian authority. You need that full support of every political resource. And there are a lot of folks who follow parts of what McChrystal said and feel like they're not getting those resources. If you're a soldier on the ground in Afghanistan right now, you know you have the bullets, you know you have the bombs, but you don't always feel like you have all those bits and pieces alongside you to commit to that fight.
In terms of the relationship between the political debate here, Paul, and what's happening on the ground, I thought one of the things that Michael Hastings highlighted effectively in his Rolling Stone piece was soldiers complaining to General McChrystal about counterinsurgency. Is there a lack of buy-in on this doctrine from frontline soldiers and from frontline soldiers who are coming home as new vets?
I think there's a lack of buy-in nationwide. I don't think everybody is absolutely clear on what we're doing in Afghanistan. And I think that's in part because the president hasn't been focused on it. And I think we've really got to drill down deep and hear part of what's coming out of the military. McChrystal was a rock star. A lot of people in the field really support him 100%, feel like he has a sophisticated understanding of what's happening on the ground.